Hello, hello, hello. Hey, you guys. Day after Christmas. Hope your guys' teams did well, but my God, what a crazy weekend of football. Where do I even begin? We were really, I'm pretty sure just about everybody had their team that was worried about their team in some way, shape, or form. I didn't really do anything with my hair, so if it looks freaky, that's why. I was wearing a hat, walking the dog, even though I probably didn't need it. It was snowing, so I was like, you know what, we'll bust out the Packers hat. We'll show it with pride for anybody that looks out, knowing that my team won, but by a slim margin. We'll, of course, get to that. But my God, these games. I am going to try and keep it short. I don't really want to go over every single tidbit because I did watch every single game yesterday. I wasn't like glued to the screen, because the games they were good, but they were also very bizarre and odd. I don't think there's been a week this crazy. And I mean, I feel like I sound like a broken record with that this season, whenever I talk about games. It's like, what in the world are we watching? What is the NFL of today? Like, I mean, if it's scripted, literally their script, the leading theme has to be like spontaneous. Like spontaneous combustion, spontaneous dominance, games that are so back and forth that it's like, man, it's really about who has more of the pull for the majority of the game that wins now. It's just ridiculous. But hey, enough with that intro. I'm sure you guys, if you watched, you're kind of thinking like, the same thing. Like, there's no way that, like, you're not thinking the same thing with all these games. But moving on, we're just going to go through these games. I'm not going to cover Saturdays because I did that. I did that at kind of Sunday morning. I honestly, that Sunday morning stream it's kind of a blurb. Very eventful time of the year. I've been kind of tired. I was thinking about going out and working today, to be honest, and being like, we'll delay this stream till tomorrow. But the roads really aren't that good here in Colorado. A bunch of ice because it's drifting between freezing and, freezing temps and then below freezing temp and then above freezing temps. So, like, I guess a bunch of, ice is what my sister said, which, sucks. I'm, yeah, we're going to switch it to the, main broadcasting screen. We're going to look at these games. Cleveland Browns at Houston. Not much to say here. I will give props to Amari Cooper. Who the heck it puts up 265? This to me looks more of like a Tyreek Hill type thing. Obviously, he could have very easily had under 200, but still a monster of a game if he didn't have this 75-yard reception. But kudos to him. He beat up on a Texan team that, in all honesty, this game, it's one of those games that you're like, oh, as a Browns fan, we're not worried. We're not worried, right? I mean, Flacco has 368 yards. He only has 103 yards to anybody not named Amari Cooper. And this is the only time Amari Cooper's really done this season. I have mad respect for him. I think he was done dirty by the Cowboys. I think they were idiots to get rid of him. And, you know, goodness, only 103 yards through the rest of these guys. But you've got to feel, I mean, to me, like, yeah, the Texans, I wouldn't say they feel good because, with 2 weeks left in the season, you're, you're right in the thick of it still when you could have possibly been not in the thick of it, type of thing. Let me look at this. Oh my gosh. But, where, okay. You know what? I'm really, All right, we're not even gonna bother. I was gonna go look at their schedule remaining, but we all know that the final week is almost always for divisional games. I'm not sure who they play. Hopefully Stroud comes back. I feel like, they had Davis Mills starting. Clearly he didn't do, or I mean, sorry, they had Case Keenum. Totally getting things backwards. They had Case Keenum starting, and through 3 quarters, he had 62 yards. Don't get me wrong, he's going up against, the Browns defense, obviously, but it's absolutely mind-boggling to me that Mills comes in and he's still able to throw it 32 times in 1 quarter and put up 149 yards. This would be troubling to me I mean, maybe it isn't troubling to me as a Browns fan, but maybe it is cuz like, yeah, you had a good offensive game, especially Amari Cooper, but you allow these guys to score quite a bit of points at the end of the game when he comes in. When you're looking like your defense should maybe be able to just lock him up a whole game. I guess I didn't really watch this because I didn't expect it to be that much of a competition, but you know, it says something, I guess, when a guy is able to put up that many yards and throw it this many opportunities. Like, don't you have a little bit of pride to defend as the number one defense in the Browns? It's just kind of odd and mind-boggling or whatever. But that's my take on this game. We'll move on. There's really not much to say about this game besides Amari Cooper. Yes, Flacco. Everyone's saying, man, he's at an advanced age and he's thrown now for over 300 yards a few games in a row. But I just think that they haven't really, it hasn't been the cleanest of victories for them, for, the last few weeks, to be honest with you, even though I think they've secured the division, their division at this point, and the only reason they're playing is they do have the potential to still get the 1 seed. Or I guess they didn't win their division. What am I saying? The Ravens have their division right now, potentially. But goodness, boy, am I all out of sorts. Sorry, you guys. But yeah, the Browns have secured a playoff spot, I'm pretty sure. I think there's only technically 2 spots available in the AFC. Possibly, maybe. I would need to look at it. But and moving on, we have Jets Commanders, an interesting game. Another game where the Jets put up 30. Where 2 weeks ago they put up 30 against the Texans. The Sam Howell looking completely inept in this game. Up against a good defense. And then it's crazy. The Breece Hall show, as I'll call this, because really, I mean, he carried this team. 96 yards receiving, 95 yards rushing. He did really well. He didn't even, I mean, in a lot of these, it's like they weren't long gains, so he was just chipping and chipping all game, but, yeah, he did really well. Obviously, Simeon struggled a lot. They obviously had a lot of offensive plays, you look in here. And I think it was one of the things to be said that, like, the amount of plays they ran compared to Washington and, Jacoby Brissett coming in, doing a really good job. Goodness, Sam Howell, I feel for him. He was supposed to be the future, and this is one of those games that leaves him in doubt. There's really not much to say, but besides that, man, it's crazy that they even had any sort of a comeback, to be honest with you, with Washington. Because gosh, it's quite mind-boggling, type of thing where it's like, yeah, they had a fumble and a fumble loss and then one recovery, but like, one interception for Washington, but then Quincy Williams and Tony Adams, two wily vets on this side with turnovers from Sam Howell. The Commanders, I just don't know. Maybe they fire Rivera. Maybe who knows what the heck they do. But yeah, crazy how this game was so close, I guess. And what are the Jets even playing for? Is how I'll finish it. Moving on, we have Seahawks Tennessee. Seahawks continue their winning ways. which is nuts to me. They, they clearly the defense won it for them this game. None of their three weapons over 100 yards. Kenneth Walker having, a very mediocre day. And it's like to think, his average would have been abysmal without this 24-point run. He would have had 15 attempts for 30 yards, type of thing where it's like, man, 2 yard average, but yeah, credit to your defense, which has been the Seahawks problem all year. It's either then been their defense performing well enough to where, oh, they hold them and you can't, the other team doesn't win, but their offense, how the heck is your offense struggling so bad? Maybe you don't even start Geno Smith anymore, in my opinion. Like Drew Lock brought life, to this offense. And he, to me, fits the mold a little bit more in the sense that he can run and escape when, Geno Smith was only sacked 3 times. It's not crazy. But yeah, you have Tannehill, whose mobile was sacked 6 times. But Seattle, I wouldn't be proud of this one. You're proud of it because, yeah, you're holding a playoff spot, but this reminds me a lot of my Packers where it's like, man, ugly win. Really did, could have went either way, and to think if they had Will Levis playing on this team, they probably win, to be honest with you. I think that he's just a younger, more spry version of Tannehill at this point where he can run, has a little bit more gutsy of a, play style. But I think that's what, you need on a Tennessee team where it's like they don't really have any other stars. And I don't think Tannehill can be the star and carry this team. I do like D-Hop. I think that D-Hop, signing here has proven that he can still go out and ball. Clearly, Tannehill couldn't get him the ball that much. But yeah, crazy kind of just a win that you accept because of the W, nothing else. Going to Falcons and Indianapolis, it was interesting to me. They did say that Indianapolis was an underdog in this game, even though to me, like, why? Why would they be the underdogs? They, I believe, still currently hold a playoff spot. Their division is up in the air, crazily up in the air at this time of year. It's the most interesting division in football right now. That's the closest to knit together where it's like, who even knows who's going to be the division leader now? You have the Colts losing. Later, we'll get to the Jaguars. And then, I mean, there's obviously the Texans who have just been without Stroud, who I think could have potentially, snuck into the lead into this division if he had been playing, but not the case. And yeah, Minshew, looking very average. Looking very average in this game. Jonathan Taylor, not good. Minshew and Goodson, and I mean, nothing worked for them. And then even on the side of the Falcons, you have Heineke playing. He has a very kind of, satisfactory day for a backup, but then Bijan doesn't do anything too crazy, but your defense, doing well. Bates interception, them getting to the quarterback quite a bit, 6 times to get to Minshew, which you're not going to win with a guy like him. He obviously had proved he had some mobility. I still think Minshew's playing pretty well, but yeah, nothing really spectacular from his receivers this game. So yeah, overall a game as the Falcons, you're happy they came out and finally showed up. But yeah, it kind of leaves much to be desired in terms of like how overall well you played. Besides on the defensive front, getting to Minshew a lot. Now, moving on to my Packers in Carolina. I obviously watched this game. I actually see why, Bryce Young was the top overall pick. He made some pretty beautiful throws. But then there was also those ones where it's like, what the hell were you running, Barry? DJ Chark carving us up for a couple Thielen, I knew in the back of my head would be playing for some revenge and made like a one-handed grab where he's got the corner right on him. And it's just crazy to me that one of the worst offenses in the league, the 30th ranked offense in the league, can put up 30 and ultimately doesn't take it to overtime only because of the clock. Only because of the clock, you guys. And I'm just not happy at all with the defensive play. I don't think it's the players. I think it's this play calling. Because there were some things that were flashbacks to when we played Baker where, oh yeah, they're just slipping it to these guys near the line of scrimmage where we're not defending and we're not playing up. And then there's ones where, oh, they're doing a simple out route where it's completely uncovered. And it's like, God, if Barry keeps on doing this bubble coverage, and it keeps screwing us like this, teams are just going to be able to chip and chip and chip away at us. You may not give up the big play, but it's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous to me. I would say we did well against the run, but the thing about that is we were up with a lead so much that when they were running it and they had some good runs with Chuba, but and then Ihmir Smith-Marsette, a guy I didn't even know. I still don't really know who he is. I had never heard this guy, but gets a gouge on a passing play, but then also gouges us on run plays. But thank God that Aaron Jones is back. I am so happy that he is back. He is a guy that needs to be the veteran leader of this offense until a distinguished player establishes themselves to be the number one. And I don't even think that with the Packers situation, here's my thoughts on how it's going to work for years going forward until, they end up losing somebody or they end up not being able to keep somebody. But like with the way the team's playing now, if it ends up being like this years down the line where you don't even have a guy who consistently gets 100-yard games or whatever else, I feel like that guy would be Watson, but he's obviously been riddled with injuries his first couple years. But and maybe Musgrave, obviously has a lacerated kidney. They say that his recovery, I guess, is going well. He may come back, but Musgrave's one of those tight ends that could be very deadly, very crazy, in a couple of years. And, I like Musgrave. And I mean, even Kraft has come in, is a baller, hard to go down, hurdles guys, just looks like he's having fun out there, which you can't help but like, but, Jordan Love distributing the ball really well. Did get sacked one time. Wasn't a crazy game for him, obviously, but he made, good throws and did well enough to have us win. A little bit less to me of these errant ones that just miss and he puts too much air under it or just doesn't throw it accurately. But yeah, I'm really happy with how this happened. And to me, this game kind of embodies that like Bryce Young is capable. I do really think he is. There were some passes I think he dropped it in nicely. I wouldn't say that for him it's his fault that he's been struggling this year. He really doesn't have a go-to guy. Thielen has kind of become that guy, gaining his trust and just being kind of that veteran wide receiver. And like DJ Chark, some drops, and then Tommy Tremble, looking pretty good. And I mean, even Steven Sullivan, having some impact, but to me, like, this is a very young team. And, they really need that they really need to kind of fix their O-line and get a guy who could be the number one is all that I really see this team needing, because yeah, they don't really have that X factor threat that teams need to like worry about. Yeah, sure, Thielen's gonna get his yards, he's gonna play well, but I have nothing but, I guess, respect for Young after this game. Even though he obviously played a shoddy defense, where it's like, what is Barry doing? I feel like we didn't even hardly get to, we flushed out Bryce a lot. We sometimes made him rush throws, but overall it's kind of nuts to me that it went like this, I guess. You know, Especially against a 2-win team. It just doesn't, give me comfort. The only comfort it gives me knowing that we needed to win this game. This was, every game essentially is a elimination game for the Packers at this point, and we need the Rams or the Seahawks to lose one, because at this point we need them to lose one, because that's the road we've paid for ourselves, losing, the two before this with the Giants and the Buccaneers. But moving on, we have Lions, Minnesota. Now, goodness gracious, Justin Jefferson is back. This worries me because obviously my Packers play on New Year's Eve, the night game. And with the way the defense has been playing, even though and in the last game that we played, they didn't have Jefferson. It wasn't like last year where, Jefferson had a heyday and then later in the year we stomped him. This is our first time seeing Jefferson this year. And obviously the Vikings were able to beat us without Jefferson. So essentially an elimination. I mean, every game's an elimination game. But Jared Goff looking very, very, very solid. 30 of 40 passing, chunking and dipping. But to me, the crazy thing about this here is that the Lions had a very opportunistic defense, but we're still giving up yards. So who knows? Maybe next week, the Packers can really dial it up and do a lot of good things on offense. And then with the way that Love has been playing and not turning the ball over, like I think it's 11 touchdowns to 1 pick, in recent games or whatever else, he's really, put the picks of the midseason kind of behind him, I hope. And Minnesota, it sounds like they're not going to have Madison. Hawkinson suffered an injury. I never like to think of, we have a better shot because of who's missing, but those are some serious injuries to me. But the thing is if they have a full strength Jefferson, like they did this game, he can really tear open a game. And, I hope that Barry actually, calls this game. Or I hope that Jair, is looking for having one of these spectacular games and he's full strength, because he did say that he played a little bit worse than expected. I don't think it was anything where it's like, oh, damn, dude, why did they play Jair Alexander? They could have played Valentine, who I think has been playing fine. But, this was the first, and it's crazy to think with the Packers, this was the first game with, the starting corners, Nixon slot, Stokes, and Jair on the outside. I hope that it was a good game to kind of prepare them for the Vikings and to prepare them for Jefferson. But it worries me. Jefferson he's obviously, one of the best young in the league. And it's like, even with a quarterback like Mullins, who, I think that he was playing, I wouldn't say he's a quarterback that plays particularly well, but he's always, in his career, and it's like he doesn't have that many touchdowns or picks. He's always had more touchdowns than picks, but then this game comes around and, he has 400 yards, but 4 interceptions. And, I get at the end, he was trying to force it to Jefferson, but he kind of did it when he didn't have to. They still had time. But yeah, I'm really hoping that because we have, more of a pass rush, I think, than I feel like we do have a better pass rush than Detroit, not to knock their pass rush, but like that maybe we can get Mullins, down and that can be our greatest defense against the pass. Cause I feel like if we have a shootout game like this, the Packers are, I don't know who's coming back. And we're not talking about, that game until later in the week. But like this was an incredibly close game where like Detroit could have very well lost. I I think that they did a very good offensive game plan where they chipped away and it was a high play count game for them where they essentially kind of controlled the time of possession, but they let up way too many big plays. And interesting divisional game where, this could have been either team's game. But props to Detroit for closing it out. And we're moving on. Buccaneers, Jaguars. I don't really want to shit talk the Jaguars too much, but I do think from what I saw of this game, and I mean, I was watching it a good amount. My brother is actually a Jaguars fan, but Lawrence just doesn't look right, like they said. He doesn't look right, and for CJ Beathard to come in and just, go 11 for 15 with 94 yards and a touchdown just kind of shows to me that, yeah, maybe they need to protect Lawrence from himself. I get he wants to play, but God, the interceptions he threw. And then Baker, he really is showing that, that he should get a payday and he should stay with Tampa, which, they've said that now they do have mutual interest. They do have mutual interest and they have mutual interest and there's a genuine reason why they should bring him back. He's had, good games recently. Clearly he shows that he can definitely, I feel like this team can only get better too as well. I think that even with Mike Evans getting older, he's still a big guy, a good route runner, and he's just tough to defend with his size and his length. And then Chris Godwin, is still very, very reliable. I think that Rachaad White is a very, reliable back. I mean, it seemed to be the only thing that it seemed to be the only thing to me that Jacksonville really defended well was the run, but I feel like they've had a good run defense all year. And it's one of their strengths to their defense is that they don't let up, big runs, So Rachaad White, yeah, he kind of had a below average day, but they didn't really need him to have a spectacular day as, Baker did really well. And this is Tampa Bay looks like a team that could potentially be very dangerous come playoff time. I mean, you have Antoine Winfield Jr. playing out of his mind. And, Jacksonville, it's hard to get a grasp on whether or not, they should really worry. Obviously a shoulder injury with Lawrence. Is huge. I feel like quarterbacks, whenever they have a shoulder injury, they can't throw the ball right. And shoulder injuries can just linger and linger, So do they play CJ? I feel like they play CJ going forward. I feel like they really need to, they still are in control of their own destiny. And CJ obviously came in and he played well. Evan Ingram did pretty well. You have Ridley doing well. Obviously, last week they had Christian Kirk go out, unfortunately, who had been doing so well for them. But yeah, a lot of turnovers, by Lawrence. And it's like this is a game that I feel like they could have contended in with, looking at they had 2 fumbles lost, 3 total, and then 2 interceptions. But they definitely, I feel like they could have contended in this game. Should they have pulled Lawrence earlier? But yeah, later in the year it becomes a battle of attrition with who can stay healthy and who has, the gusto to play well in these games. But yeah, no, the Jacksonville, I really think they need to protect Lawrence from himself and tell him that no, you're not starting or playing. Going to Bears Cardinals, the Bears looking, fine. Not an insane passing game by any means, but rushing up the wazoo against Arizona. Arizona, obviously, I think that they, you know, obviously still a pretty bad team. Nobody really doing much in terms of receiving, to be honest with you, and helping Kyler. Kyler doing a good job of, only getting sacked 2 times. He was kind of scrambling for his life, to be honest with you, which don't get me wrong, he can do, but he's a smaller guy. And I mean, you don't want him getting hit too many times. But yeah, like I said, with the Bears, good rushing, very solid rushing. Hard to say that you shouldn't be running it all the time with the way that they did. And I love it. I love, the way that they played, to be honest with you. I think that, this is a team that can be very lethal on the run. So props to the Bears. I think they're still in the playoff hunt, no matter how slim it is. But yeah, props to them, I guess, for winning their game soundly. Moving on, we have our first huge game to talk about. We have Dolphins Cowboys. Now, this was a game that I did wonder. Is it going to be a high scoring game? I think that, with this, if anyone bet beneath 45 under, 43 under, you were probably a mad lad in a way, but the defense has really showed up here. Tyreek Hill having a lot of impact plays, though. Jalen Waddle going out with an injury, unfortunate, after only having one catch for 50 yards. Still showing that they can, they can beat anybody on the pass. I think that the Cowboys were smart. They didn't play man, which I think is one of the strengths of this team is their ability to play man against most teams. With Gilmore and Bland, it's just, this team looked like they really couldn't get it going, like, offensively too much. You get Prescott going on his back quite a bit. You have no running game to speak of. I actually thought it was crazy that, they actually held and played tough against Miami's run game. I think maybe maybe it's part of the shock that, oh, look, we are so susceptible against the run, and come playoff time, teams are just going to know this. You still had like a decent running day as a team for Miami, but come to think about it, it's like it's a good thing that, the Dolphins proved they could rely on their defense in a gritty game like this. And, you know, Tua even had a fumble that they didn't lose, but yeah, Dak had a fumble that they lost, probably the only edge in this game, and the fact that, yeah, Dak sacked 4 times. Obviously, the defense of the Dolphins playing just a little bit better, and it's nuts to me thinking that the Dolphins, may not win this division. You still have Buffalo, who has stayed in it till the final 2 weeks, where you essentially have, Miami, who next week they play the Ravens, correct? The Ravens play Miami, and based on how the Ravens played this week, I don't think a shot in hell, to be honest with you. They're not going to be able to run it. The passing game of the Niners, I wouldn't say is the same kind of style as the Dolphins, but I do think that with the way that they got on the pass rush after Purdy, when they were facing, a pretty good offensive line, and I'm not talking about at the end of the game, but they were still getting to Purdy when like Trent Williams and their star linemen were out. Like, yeah, at the end of the game, it was such a killer for the Niners that they didn't have Trent and all of this, I think another lineman, but the Dolphins have a tough road for the final end of the season where, this is where people were talking like this will prove to us whether they're even a team that can go deep in the playoffs. Don't get me wrong, the AFC besides the Ravens is so much up in the air. I think that they will end up beating just about everybody besides the Ravens, but you've got to be able to win these tough games. And I mean, this was kind of the battle of two teams where it's like, can you win a team against another big team that hasn't really proven too much against teams above 500? So great win by the Dolphins. Yeah, I think that, this kind of shows that, you suffer from adversity on the Cowboys where it's like CD has a pretty good game, but then nobody else really was contributing that much besides Cooks on his one touchdown, off of a short throwing situation. But props to the Dolphins. You really, you came out here and you proved you didn't need to rely on your offense, even though your offense still did pretty well. Going on to Patriots and Broncos. Good God, was this a game I never thought in a million years I would see. So they were there was an interesting thing going into this game that Belichick, in his 23 years, doesn't have a worse record than 500, and his 500 record was like, it was like 10-10 against the Broncos. It was like 3-3 against the Packers, but the Broncos are a team that he's played a lot over the years. And goodness gracious, did they come prepared. I really think that they exposed the Broncos. The Broncos being all but eliminated essentially with this game. It was at Mile High. You don't have really any injuries on this team. You really don't have any excuse on the Broncos side. But you got Russell Wilson just playing like a fool. A fool. And people are like, oh, well, he doesn't fit the system. Then why in the heck did this team want to go after Sean Payton so bad? And then you've got the time management of Sean Payton. It was just sketchy as heck. I'm trying to remember the exact spot that it was, but yeah, Sean Payton essentially calling a timeout, thinking they're going to get it back, and then it motivates New England to just dial and dice up this defense. They made Bailey Zapp look like he should be the starter for years down the line. And they were still talking like that, oh, they need to go find a quarterback for New England. Ever since Bailey Zapp has taken over in a plethora of games, and that includes starting against my Packers, he has the nature of a winner. A guy who competes. Yes, he isn't like a scrambler type, but he can run it, but he has, a pretty good arm, pretty good accuracy. Give Bailey Zapp a chance next year. We have no idea, though, what's going to happen with the Patriots, because as it sounds, it sounds to me like, oh, there's no way that they're not moving on from Belichick, and who knows if the new head coach is going to want Bailey Zappi. But this is a team that competed, and it's like, the credit to him and credit to even, Zeke. He didn't do anything rushing. He didn't do anything like rushing. Only Tyquan Thorne did anything, rushing wise. But like Ezekiel Elliott had a good amount of catches as like a security blanket, making sure that no play was negative. And I think that if you have a QB that understands that you don't always have to make the big play, like you're content enough to not risk the football, that to me just proves, football intelligence and IQ and competitiveness. And him, dumping it off to Zeke a good number of times, the leading receptions on this team for only 33 yards. Yes, I get it. But it chips away at a defense to where they're going to have to play up. They're going to have to play tough football, tough defense. And, I think, and Devontae Parker, he's had kind of a roller coaster kind of time with the Patriots. But it's like, I think that he had some good chemistry. He had some good chemistry with Bailey. And then even Demario Douglas, who both had some big chunk plays. Same with, and Jalen Reagor, who so many teams have given up on now. And, he was traded to the Vikings last year. I can't even remember from who. And then it's like, and then even this guy, Farrell Brown, who I have no idea who he is. It's just like, he was spreading the ball really well. I'm not trying to make a case that Bailey Zappi should be the starter. Maybe they get somebody who's a competition. But screw Mac Jones. Mac Jones, to me, can't learn an offense and couldn't learn Bill O'Brien's offense, which was supposed to apparently fix him. But then you have Bailey Zapp, who good average, solid average, good enough to win you games, and your defense doing a really good job. I love that Barmore was, causing so much interior havoc to Denver. And this, the defense of New England has always been pretty well coached. I think that it is going to suffer when Belichick leaves, to be honest with you. But goodness gracious, it is nuts to me that, the Denver Broncos, where, Peyton had criticized the former head coach so much, and yet you are doing some really wild and off the ball crap where it's like, yeah, you call that timeout after they had a 6-yard gain. You really think your defense is going to toughen up so they can't average 2 yards a play over the next 2 plays? Like I don't know if he's out of touch because he hadn't coached for so long, but it's like uncharacteristic crap going on in the end of the season. And it's like, it really gets your just desserts. And I just feel for some of these players because Russell Wilson, screwing the pooch. For some people that were telling me, yeah, he's playing like a top 5 QB. And then your defense, your poor defense that has to keep on, that had to keep on getting put into situations because, oh yeah, your offense can't stay on the field and they can't do anything. Just an overall kind of, bad game by the Broncos. And don't get me wrong, it's not like the New England Patriots played some spectacular game, but they played a scrappy game, to compete. So kudos to them. And for not saying that we're not a team that's just going to roll over at the end of the year, even though we're out of the playoff hunt. Moving on, we have Raiders Chiefs. Good Lord. I don't really want to say anything about the Raiders because good Lord, they didn't really do anything besides run the football, which great formula. Great formula. You don't have to risk Aiden O'Connell throwing an interception. Mahomes, good Lord, I'm sorry. There is something mentally wrong with Mahomes at this point. You cannot tell me, and it's not even his fault. It is not even his fault. It is the way that his team has now dropped so many footballs that, goodness gracious, when you second guess yourself as a quarterback, and it wasn't because of him. It was not because of him. It's been, the team, and good Lord, what the heck is wrong? You look at this and you look at, even Travis Kelce, it goes back to earlier how I'm talking about your average affected by so much, and it's like only 44 yards total. Has one 24-yard catch, would have had 4 catches for 20 yards otherwise. Travis Kelce, your best weapon. Rashee Rice, who, target 12 times, 50%, completion percentage with him alone. And it's just, man, I don't know what to say, but like, I think that Kansas City is doomed to make the playoffs and be a wild card exit this year. I don't have any hatred towards them, but it is insane to me the colossal failure that is them and Andy Reid and Mahomes. There's nothing they can do to solve it. There's nothing they can do to solve it. Even, Pacheco playing, but then he doesn't have, a good game at all. He would have had 10 carries for 14 yards. An abysmal 1.4 average. I hate that I'm kind of roasting them, to be honest with you. I think that their defense, besides White, they played well against a team with weapons. Adams, Myers, Hooper, Hunter Renfrow. And it's like, yeah, you barely throw, you completely lock up the pass, but then you cannot lock up the run at all. But yeah, good Lord. I do not know what to say besides the mental toughness of the Chiefs might be the lowest in the league right now. Might be the lowest in the league. I'm not going to lie. Which makes them just susceptible to really bad and ugly losses like this. Moving on, we have Eagles, Giants. I am not going to lie to you. This is a game where Hurts near the end, he finally looked like how he should look. Running it, throwing the ball downfield, dropping dimes. DeAndre Swift, ultimately kind of carrying this team. He looked like the one spark that's going to be like, you guys, I'm going to will us to victory. And you've got DeVito not playing well at all, getting benched for Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor coming in. Yes, he had a pick, but coming in and just looking fluid, like a calm, content backup that's ready to come in, do what he can, and make this a game. This is a game that, it's at Philadelphia, and it's nuts for me to think that, oh yeah, no, the Giants were in this game. Especially with their own line. It's like, you talk about sacks, you had one on the day. You had one sack, you guys. And it's like, it reminds me of when my Packers played them and we didn't get a single sack. Their O-line played, way better than expected, with how questionable their O-line has been all year. Essentially the complete deflation of the Giants and why they suck this year is because of their O-line. But they've proven that they can compete. They can compete if they're not giving up, an astronomical amount of sacks. Yeah, they don't really have guys that it's like are the go-to besides Darren Waller, who went out, I think, with an injury or something like that. And he obviously didn't have an incredible game. But yeah, Saquon Barkley showing his power and his determination to get every single yard, he could. But what an ugly win. This is a win, like I said earlier, where you aren't happy about being an Eagles fan. You're happy about the promise of what it looked like later in the game when Hurts finally looked comfortable and he started to actually throw it like he did, like the MVP caliber Jalen Hurts. Where it's like, yeah, you had a 300-yard game, but it's just not convincing with how some of this game went. And it's like, it took everybody, contributing this game to do so. When it's like, you have such a good, base core of weapons and Brown, Goddard, and Smith, Devonta Smith. But, yeah, crazy odd game that I didn't think was going to be close. Even with the Philadelphia's recent struggles, I'm glad that the Giants competed, you know. But moving on to perhaps the craziest game, Ravens Niners. Now I do remember specifically that I said the only way the Ravens win this game, the only reason they win this game, you guys, is because they get to Purdy, they make him uneasy, and they make him make bad throws. One of his picks, I kind of understand because his arm got adjusted, but he seemed oblivious to the pressure, which is, sometimes it's a good thing when you get the ball up. If you're oblivious, you don't really get panicked and overthrow the ball or misthrow it. But in this case, it's like you need to know when your own pocket is collapsing. And this wasn't even his first pick. They were driving down the field. Kittle had this 58-yard gain just off of a nuke. Baltimore looks like, oh my goodness, they look like a team that, was at the mercy of the Niners, a team that is at the mercy of Kyle Shanahan's play calling, at the mercy of their players, and then it's like later in the game, you have the Ayuk show when they're trying to catch up, and they were within reach. Looking at this score, you wouldn't think that they were, but to me, they were within reach of catching up to Baltimore. It's crazy to me too that Ayuk was so hot, and you have Darnold for whatever reason just looking to the right. I thought Darnold came in and he started playing pretty well. He played pretty well, for not having. He had 6 passes before he came in, and he put up 14 balls, in this game. And he throws it directly over the middle. Maybe it was a curse upon them, but Baltimore comes in and makes a statement game visiting the Niners. And by golly, this wasn't an insane, impressive offensive win for them. It was a win for their defense. Don't get me wrong. Lamar Jackson did what he does, and he would escape, extend plays, and did a really good job. Had a kind of, to be honest with you, they don't pass for a ton of yards on the Ravens. I don't think people realize this, but they don't usually pass for a ton of yards. It is the combined efforts of the fact that, he has usually a good amount of passing, but then a good amount of rushing. I think that the Niners did the best they could in terms of limiting Jackson on his legs. They only got to him a couple times, pressured him a little bit more, but it's hard. He's just a play waiting to happen. Yeah, Zay Flowers having a good game. Isaiah Likely just doing some hard, tough running. Gus Edwards having that huge reception, blow up play where it's like, good Lord, they should have. There's no way he shouldn't have had 39 yards. I'm sorry. Odell being quiet again. I really think Odell's, Aguilar even having, some good plays where it's like he faked out, these guys, but it's like everyone on this team is kind of a contributor and a potential threat, in my opinion. Isaiah Likely, I was making puns that it's likely this dude gets a catch. It's likely this guy plays well, but it's not even a joke anymore. I think Isaiah Likely, with Andrews not being in, which is unfortunate. I love me some, Andrews. This team has a very dynamic kind of weapon set that is going to be hard to beat come playoff time. There's a reason why they are now, they should be number 1 in everybody's power rankings. If anybody puts anybody besides Baltimore, they are, I don't know what you're smoking. I'll just say it. The Niners, I think, are still going to be there at the very end. Like, I feel like this could very well still be the Super Bowl matchup. And this was the most Super Bowl-like game we've had all year. Between two top winning bona fide playoff teams, elite teams. And the only thing that I think could derail them that does worry me is if Trent Williams' injury takes him out for a while, because they ended up going to the third stringer and he looked like the biggest turnstile lineman I had seen in a while. I get it that you were a third stringer, but like, he wasn't moving his legs. He wasn't blocking. And even when the guard went out, it's like, man, what a mess. And Purdy, he kind of resorted to how he was early in the year when like San Fran with all the talent they had and they had that injury time, but he was forcing balls and just trying to make plays. Some of his balls were just inaccurate and uncharacteristic. But this is a team that, if all of their weapons are fully healthy, I based on what I saw from Darnold, I think that they could win with Darnold if Purdy. Because, Shanahan, obviously Purdy had some sort of a small injury, but he was cleared to ready to go in. But Shanahan was like, you are not going back into this game. But Darnold looked good enough to win to me. And I get it. He only had 6 passes before this game. Yes, he threw a pick. He didn't throw to the one-on matchup that Ayuk had, where it's like, throw it up to him. He was the reason you were in this spot in the first place, was how Ayuk played and gambled and did all of that. But yeah, the only thing that worries me about San Fran is if their O-line is banged up, yes, they're going to be able to, kind of scheme it to where they're doing shorter stuff because of how good of a blocking team and how many of these players are team players? Like, there's everyone is a team player on this team. Shanahan has them playing into his system and completely buying in because it's a system that works. You have Kittle, Ayuk, Debo, McCaffrey, Kyle Juszczyk, foosball. I know you're probably not here because you're not chatting, but yeah, Kyle Juszczyk, what a baller. Even Willie Snead. I mean, they just, to me, you have such great weapons. And then you have such a good defense that is, they're likely gonna just steamroll the team they play next week. I don't even need to look to see who the heck they're playing. But the Niners, they're the team to beat in the NFC, same as the Ravens and the AFC. But the AFC, yep, they definitely, Lamar Jackson, looks like he could win his second MVP. And well deserved. He's battled through adversity, fought for his own contract, and even impressed Harbaugh, who it's like is, the third longest tenured head coach, and isn't a guy that's going to be easily impressed, having been in the league for a while now. But yeah, Lamar Jackson, a credit to you, your boys. Your offense played, not lights out, I feel like, but they played well enough to win. You stuck to how you need to play the game in these, how you need to play the game in these close games, and your defense, a credit to them. But that really sums it up for, last week's games. If you guys have any comments or anything, feel free to share them. I thought it was an absolutely, lovely time to watch. A lovely time to watch the, football this weekend. Happy late Christmas to you all. But we're going to look at the Thursday matchup here real quick. We have Jets visiting Cleveland. And obviously, it's nuts to me. You still have Cleveland's held their first ranked defense all year, despite playing, some pretty tough teams, including the Ravens, and then you got the Jets who do have their third ranked defense and ultimately, you know, uh, has been keeping them in games and allowing them to, not get blown out. But yeah, the last ranked offense, which is mind boggling to me, because they do have some decent weapons. This team should not be dead last. Yes, they have a shoddy O line, but overall, a game that I think, the Jets are definitely going to get, I wouldn't even say humbled because, I mean, yeah, they just won, but they kind of realized that they eked by the Commanders, which the Commanders are a rebuilding team. Not to say the Jets are. I don't think they're really rebuilding. I just think that their O line needs to be fixed, and this team will be dangerous. But looking at this, I don't think Flacco. I think that his streak ends of 300 plus yards games, unless they get the ball so much, which I could. I'm take that back. They're gonna probably get after. I don't think it's Wilson playing. I think it's. Oh, excuse me. Oh man. I don't think it's Wilson playing. I think it's what's his face that I forget his name. Honestly, I'm trying to remember. The guy who was on the Rams. Simeon. Yep, Trevor Simeon. Or was he on the Rams? I can't even remember. I don't even remember. But yeah, Trevor Simeon. I don't know what to say besides. Oh yeah, this isn't the guy that was on the. Okay, I'm completely. It was Brett Ripien. So yeah, Simeon, obviously an aged vet, not doing great in the game. Obviously, kind of being carried by the defense. But looking at Jets Browns. August 3rd. Obviously, this is preseason. Clearly the Browns even won this matchup. But the Browns, they're probably gonna have a heyday and they're just gonna smoke the Jets. Which the Browns, it'll be good for them to really solidify an 11 win season when they're trying to potentially take. They could still get the number one seed. I know it sounds crazy, but this is a team that could still get the number one seed. But it it's gonna be an interesting end of the year. Not so much in this game, but yeah, the Browns are more than likely gonna smoke the Jets. I think that 7.5 points is kind of it's possible because Flacco, yeah, he's thrown for 300, but I don't think Amari Cooper is gonna go for he's definitely gonna go for less than what he went for before, right? But thinking about this game, I really don't think that there's much to talk about. I think the Jets, their O line, of course, is going to get insanely exposed against the likes of Myles Garrett, Za'Darius Smith, and the Browns pass rush. On this defense, that's like it's a broken record talking about it at this point. It's the strength of this team. The rest of their defense still very, very good, but and the Jets. Yeah, you have Garrett Wilson, but which Garrett is going to hold promise, Myles Garrett or Garrett Wilson? I not a very good joke, but I overall think the Browns are just going to smack the Jets, and that's going to be the end of Thursday night. I think that. God goodness, I guess maybe these teams haven't been on Thursday night yet, but like it seems like kind of a lackluster thing, at the end of the season to be having. But yeah, goodness. Yeah, I'm just the score that I'm gonna predict for this game is I think the Browns. Well, let's say they get 27, just to be on the safe side. I think they could score more, but the Jets do have a decent defense. That isn't just gonna let the Browns score over 30, in my opinion. But yeah, then we have the Jets. I'm gonna say they'll score 13. I think that they have some ways to move the ball, but I really, maybe 13 might even be being generous. This could be a game where they score 6. They don't even have a touchdown, in my opinion. But we'll see if their win Sunday maybe gives them a bit more momentum. Who knows? But yeah, I really don't, I'm not gonna lie, I really don't want to talk too much about this game because it just doesn't seem very interesting compared to this last weekend. And I mean, you guys would probably agree. It's like we've got a team who's a playoff hopeful. Maybe the Jets use that and they rally behind, Sala or whatever. But I just don't see it. I just think the talent discrepancy and the way the Browns defense is playing. What else would you think would happen in a game like this? But if you guys, have any opinions on it, be feel free to tell me. Um Overall though, I think it looks like a very just I don't know, doozy of a game for the Browns. Yeah, week 17 versus the Jets. Let's look at the full schedule here. And then week 18 it's against the Bengals, who knows if the Bengals will still be in contention. I guess there's a good chance, I would say, but you know, the Browns are very much in the thick of it of being able to potentially, get the 1 seed. But with that being said, this is Castcast. I am your host, Cassidy Streeter, and if you're watching and not chatting, that's fine with me. I do prefer to like engage, I guess, with my viewers. Um, but you don't have to. It definitely isn't a requirement if you're here. But as always, go Pack Go. I'll see you guys on Friday.